Welcome to Security Boulevard Chats, the podcast version of the website, Security Boulevard. Alan, great to be doing this with you. You know, just full disclosure, you and I started doing a security podcast in 2004. That was our very first podcast we ever did.
And it was on security, though.
And was on security. Yeah. At the
still
time,
doing it 20 years later, Mitchell.
Got it going. Yeah, and we're still fixing cross-site
I think we can
issues.
grow by then, but okay, we're stuck in security. I like the time machine.
It's like the wagon wheel ruts. We can't get out of it. Mm-hmm. No, we have actually expanded on a lot more things. So, well, let's first of all talk a little bit about, why we first started doing podcasting on security. Maybe why we're still doing podcasting on security, right? And when this was actually your brainchild, I think you got it idea from maybe Brad Feld or a few folks about starting a podcast on security. But there was a group of us, maybe a dozen or so, that were starting to do podcasts.
It goes back to that whole, if you remember, Mitch, the whole Web 2.0 thing was going on, right? Intranets and RSS feeders, which, empowered the blogging. And then from blogging, we got to podcasting. Brad Feld definitely got me started on the blogging. And then we saw the podcast sort of come up out of blogging, if you remember, right? And you and I were both at Still Secure at the time, and we started doing it then because, look, it was a different world. Security was, we didn't call it cyber; it was security or infosec. It wasn't the big deal it is. I always thought it was a big deal.
It was still niche. I guess it was still very, vertical niche.
It was niche. It was a niche business, a cottage industry in many ways. And while people in security always thought it was the most important thing, the fact of the matter was the rest of the world gave lip service to it.
Mm-hmm. And didn't understand
it. And so part of the blogging and podcasting was to make people more security aware, more security conscious.
We also had a lot of people moving into security as the importance of it was elevated through all the things going on. And I know we kind of took it on as our mission to help more people perform a security job in the products we were creating in the podcast and blogging. Because, sysadmins or network admins are suddenly now security people. Well, what do I want to do? What does that mean? Yeah, I'll go to SANS and get my training, but help, I need some resources. And that was part of why we did this.
I did a video interview today, Mitch, that you can probably find on TechStrong TV with the Chief Security Officer of Cloudflare. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think the fella's name. I think it was Grant. Grant was his first name. I'll get you his name.
Yeah.
But much like this guy's a rock star. You'd love talking to him. But he's about our age, I guess, Mitch, maybe a few years younger. But he's been in security since the late 90s.
Grant Borzickas.
Mid-90s to late 90s, 30 years.
Grant Borzickas, I think is his name.
Right, Grant Borzickas. And Grant went to school got an accounting degree.
Mm-hmm.
Not an engineer, not a coder. Perfect for security. You know how he got into security? He bought books. He bought books, real, and not ebooks and not Kindles. He went to the bookstore, he'd read a book, and when that was done, he'd go back to the bookstore and buy another book. And over the last 30 years, Grant's been a CISO for about 20 years, including at two of the largest banks in the world. He's worked for some nuclear power companies. And now, of course, he's Chief Security Officer at Cloudflare. And we had this conversation today. So here's a guy, didn't have any formal computer or technical training, right? All self-taught. My story is I don't either. I went to law school, right? And I mean, if any of us, you're the one who has at least some technical engineering background.
Computer science, but business too. Yeah.
But yet we found our way into decent careers, maybe Grant more than us, decent careers around security. And yet today we have all these, I call them kids, but all these folks who are coming out of school with a concentration in cyber and cyber this and cyber that. And what's the most common question we hear from these people? How do I break into this business? How do I get my first job? How do I get my foot in the door?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like something's a mismatch because you got all this training, but you can't get a job. And then at the same time, all we hear about is the security gap, the security skills shortage. That we can't get enough qualified people to work in security. Mitch, it doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's not all this reason, but if I think back, when we hired security people back then, you hired a firewall engineer, you hired a network, somebody set up the DMZ and honeypots and that kind of thing, right? Or somebody just set up a monitoring system or whatever it was. Today, it seems like when we're hiring security people, we want them to know 12 things already, and they're coming out of school. So, what do you learn in school? You learn how to learn, right? Yes, you learn some good content, but a lot of that is now you got to really learn it in the real world. And so, I had this conversation. It was actually with the CTO at Splunk talking about you have to hire people knowing that you're going to train them, knowing that you're going to educate them. It just has to happen because they don't come equipped with everything you're going to need. And what you think you're going to need when you hire them is not what you're going to need 6 or 12 months from now. So you want to hire people that can learn and apply that. That is much importance about skill as opposed to what are the 12 technologies that you should have. Well,
absolutely.
If you have 3 of them, you're doing good, or 6. So I think that's part of it. We sort of set ourselves up to fail by looking for purple unicorns on Mars. Well, there's 3 attributes of which you're not going to find anybody that way. So grow your people, help them develop. To me, that's part of why we're stuck where we are.
It's that, and it's then we also say not only do you have to have these 12 attributes, but you have to have that done them for 12 years. Yeah. But these things were only around, for 5 years. So how the heck am I going to have 12 years worth of experience doing it? Well, sorry, son, you can't have the job.
You had to work a triple shift.
Yeah. So it is. And by the same token, though, Mitchell, security, or cyber as we call it today, has never been bigger, has never been more important, has never been more of a priority. And it is, things we only hoped and wished for when we first started podcasting to raise awareness and the profile of security have all come true. Sometimes not for good reasons. It's been the result of
bad things happening.
Bad things happening. But nevertheless, we've seen tremendous. And I'll tell you something else. I think in spite of the mother of all breaches that we've had, right? There's an article I saw on the Yahoo Finance about this. Was it 26 billion records or some nonsense?
It's an aggregation of all the other breaches into one breach. Right?
Yeah, exactly, into one big breach. In spite of the mother of all breaches, I would put forth the proposition that we're actually more secure. We're doing more around security today than we ever did. There are more vectors. There's more attack surface. The bad guys are better, smarter, faster. But overall, our security posture is much, much better today than it was 20 years ago.
Oh, we'd be falling down at every turn, right? Dealing with an incident if we were still there.
No, 20 years ago, security was a rounding error on the spreadsheets.
It was. And talking about what some of the differences are. When you and I started in security, I call it in a nice way, security was for the monks. The few people who knew security that nobody else could understand what the heck they were talking about, and they went and did their thing, and everybody else kind of went, I don't get it. To now, security isn't just network security and protocols and TCP/IP and firewall rules and nice things like that. Yes, it's all that stuff, but we're talking about compliance. We're talking about data privacy. We're talking about software, right? APIs and applications. We didn't get into software architecture and security 15, 20 years ago.
No, I heard an interesting stat today. Actually, it came out of that interview I did with Grant at Cloudflare. Mm-hmm. They just did an API security report. 57% of internet traffic is API.
Absolutely. Akamai would back that up too. Yeah. Well,
between Akamai and Cloudflare, I think they carry near 1/2 of traffic on the internet. Cloudflare is like 25%, and Akamai is about the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's certainly in there. But, you mentioned network security, Mitch. And that's where kind of, as we said, that's where security started for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Me, certainly. I think you as well.
My first fire, 98.
Yeah. I was doing managed checkpoint firewalls at a company called Interliant. OPSEC. But anyway, one of the people who were big in network security back then is our friend Marty Roesch.
Marty.
And, Marty, of course, was the founder of Snort, the open source IDS. And then, of course, built on that Sourcefire, which he sold to Cisco. And Marty's now the CEO of its Netography, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But still doing network security.
He is. Well, he kind of did real well and took a little time and found his next thing. Guess what? It's network security still. But,
Marty did a byline article up on Security Boulevard. And it's interesting. It's don't mystify network security in 2024. Include on-prem and cloud.
Yeah.
And I think part of that, Mitchell, is when you tell, especially people who don't have 30 years in the business, hey, what about your network security posture? They tend to one of two things. Either they discount the cloud because they say, look, the cloud is kind of my WAN. It's outside my network. My network is still my LAN, right? And that's network security to me. I'm still putting big boxes in front of the moat, right, at the drawbridge. And they just think of sort of that on-prem, if you will, network security. Or they go the other way and say, look, the cloud's blown up network security. When you say network security, I'm really talking about cloud security now, because, and when I talk about network security in cloud, it's really IAM, right? Identity and access control, identity and access management. Because what I'm doing with my network security is I don't have that choke point anymore, where I could choke everything. But where I do have that choke point is where I allow you onto my infrastructure, whether it's in the cloud or what have you. And Marty makes the point that, hey, you know what? Network security includes both. And by defining it as one or the other, or one is more important than the other, you kind of miss the totality of it. You need to kind of have a holistic view, if you will, of your assets wherever they are. And that's been a big push, not only in Netography, but with a lot of companies, Mitch, where job one, you can't protect what you don't know you have. And so really kind of defining your attack surface and your assets.
And if you think about it, I mean, yes, there are cases where what you're doing on-prem is because you can't do it in the cloud, maybe regulatory reasons, data protection, whatever it might be. So there are cases where it needs to only be on-prem and it's not going to talk to other things that might be in the cloud. On the other hand, most of us, if we're not fully in the cloud, most of us are hybrid, right? We're both. We call it private cloud, public cloud, or on-prem and public cloud. It's both, and we do VPCs between the two. And it isn't let me secure one and then I'll secure the other and just connect them with a VPC. You want the same policies. You want your policy orchestration to happen in similar ways between those environments. You don't want them to get out of sync. You have to audit both. You have to do all the same things in the cloud you had to do in the on-site on-prem data center. You just might do them a little bit differently with the services that you're using, or some of it is done for you, right? You don't have to do as much of the heavy lifting in it. And it seems that that's part of what Marty's point is you got to have a holistic view of security. It's not just network security if you're on-prem, or network security if you're in the cloud security. Agreed.
And Marty's a good guy to make that case, actually. It's a great article that you definitely want to check that out.
Absolutely.
So, Mitch, going from the 20, 30-year-old network security to today, I have to bring up AI.
Of course.
We're more than 10 minutes in. We're allowed.
Yeah.
There's an article I saw, again, part of Security Bloggers Network on Security Boulevard, about the use of AI, generative AI in cybersecurity. And to me, there's two aspects of AI in security. They're kind of like binary star system that orbit each other. Mm-hmm. One is, how do we use AI, generative AI, to make our cybersecurity better? Mm-hmm. Right? How can we be more effective cybersecurity utilizing generative AI? But the dark star that circles that is, what can we do to secure our generative AI? Right? It has to be secured. We have to make sure that the information in there, doesn't fall into the wrong hands if it's proprietary, and there's a whole mission of securing AI. And I'm afraid when these stars,
data poisoning and new things we got to protect from, right? Yeah,
exactly. And at some point, do these two stars circling each other combine in supernova into some singularity or black hole or what?
The event horizon.
What do you think?
Well, it's kind of one of those inevitabilities, right? So AI is happening. Generative AI is accelerating things because it's, now everybody has access to it and everybody wants to figure out how to use it. And there are people doing interesting things in security. Like, one of the first things I saw was helping you with getting information out of our systems, right? It might be an observability or security monitoring or SIM or something, but it's still hard to pull information out of those things, put it into context that you can put it in a report. Or if you're doing a incident management situation, correlate this stuff together and tell me what really matters between that data. And so people are using it in interesting ways like that for compliance reporting and for incident management. I think the next thing, to really think about is, well, the bad guys are using it, right? They're using AI to, whether it's creating fake videos and audios or using it to, find innovative ways to attack us. We have to find innovative ways to, thwart those things. And I think that's sort of the arms race of AI in the security world. It's a new, we always were in an arms race, but now we've got, nuclear weapons instead of conventional.
Yeah, no, we've got the next generation of weapons there, right? Literally the H-bombs of it. Yeah. Mitch, I did a TechStrong TV interview a few weeks back with, and let me just make sure I get his name right here, James Murfin. And James is he's a high executive. I think he's SVP of security or CISO over at Visa.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And
there's a big job.
Yeah, he's SVP, Global Head of Risk and Identity Solutions at Visa. And it was how the evolution of AI-enabled technology is enabling fraudsters in 2024. Mm-hmm. So first of all, people don't realize, right? Yeah, Visa's a credit card company, right? The amount of money they spend on security every year is equivalent to a small country's GDP.
Oh, bad.
Right? They spend with billions with a B, right, on security. And they're already seeing massive amounts of AI-enabled fraud, whether it's better phishing kind of stuff, deep fake, video, email, messaging, smishing, all of that, and a myriad other kinds of traffic that are AI-enabled and, improved by AI. That's creating, and they're trying to stay one step ahead of it, give them credit, but it's going to be a battle for the next couple of years, man. There's no other ways around it. I don't know what else to tell you.
Or more. It's a new world. I'm not saying that the old stuff doesn't apply. It still does, but it's, it is, you put tools in the hands of people and they will do not just the expected, they'll do the unexpected with it. Right. And that's maybe it's an edge case, maybe it's one that goes mainstream, and you can't wait for it to happen. Right. You have to be engaged. So when it does happen, you can recognize it and what it is and try to figure out how it's doing what it's doing and thwart it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things about AI, especially generative AI, is it's not deterministic like writing an algorithm. It isn't if I put A, B, and C in this algorithm, I'll get D as the answer. And it'll happen that way every time. No, I get different answers out of this. So how do you test for something in a generative AI system that is, that's the answer we're going to see, or no, that's weird. It's not just, hallucinating, but it's doing something it shouldn't do. Why is that happening? Is that a security issue?
That's an excellent point. Is it a security issue or is it a feature? Is it because it's not supposed to give you the same thing every time? And by the way, I don't have it in front of me, but I was solicited this week with a pitch. There's a lot of companies coming out there that, their whole reason for being is spotting generative AI fakes or just anything generated by generative AI. Right? I mean, look, here at TechStrong, we've got people submitting articles all the time. And I've gotten pretty good. Our editors are much better at it, at looking at like a submitted article and say, yeah, this looks like it was Gen AI generated, right? It's too flowery. It's too whatever. But, but those get better every day. And we're going to need technology. Actually, that's what it was. It was a company that somehow was going to be able to not watermark, but watermark your likeness, your stuff. Now I remember Sandy Carter. Remember Sandy Carter used to be a SVP at IBM. Then she was a SVP, I think, at AWS. She's with a new company now, Unbound Domains or something like that. And these are W3 domains.
Okay.
Right? Web3 domains.
Yeah.
And it's really about taking control of your identity so that, they kind of put your identity in the blockchain, if you will. And I don't have by the time this podcast airs, we'll have the URL. And I'll give you the URL to that Sandy Carter interview.
Yeah.
But, your identifiable stuff will be in the blockchain, and you can give it that blockchain hologram is the best way I could explain it, so that people know it's authentically you and from you or by you.
It's an immutable way to figure out, to tie it back to identity.
Unless they hack the blockchain, which, quantum maybe, but yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. So I immediately after hanging out with her, I went on and I claimed ashimmy. I already had ashimmy.com, the domain, but that was just a regular web domain. But you could do like ashimmy.x, ashimmy.go, ashimmy.nf, whatever it is. And so I took ashimmy.go. It was cheaper than ashimmy.x.
That's because just what we need is more domains, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I figured let me stake my claim in Web3, right? We were talking, I think it was the last podcast we did about Web 2.0, and now it's Web 3. But it's, there's going to be we need a cyber solution around this, Mitchell, to manage IP, to stop deep fakes. We need it for a lot of good reasons.
We do, and the idea of watermarking, I think if I remember right, it was Midjourney that recently announced they're going to start watermarking their images so you can tell it was generated. Right now, a lot of times you can look at it and tell it, but deep fakes kinds of problems.
Well, reputable diamond places are doing that now with what they call, non-earth created, lab created diamonds. Yeah. That in like very micro that you can only see with the jeweler's piece. Yeah. You could see it'll say, lab created or something like that. Because you really, and I don't know enough to know what I don't know, but supposedly you really can't tell a lab diamond from an earth diamond, because they're made in the same kind of process, except one is done in days and the other is done in millions of years.
Really good.
And so there's a little difference in price. little, more than a little.
Yeah,
But we're going to need the same kind of things. I mean, again, that's, I think, part of just another aspect of the cyber mission that we weren't even thinking of 25 years ago.
Not even on the radar,
No. But, back to what we were, when we started doing this 25 years ago, that wasn't part of cyber.
No.
Or part of security. Security wasn't cyber.
It was, yeah, exactly. Very, very different world. There was also a really interesting, I believe it was a webinar, if I remember right. There's a webinar on logging's not dead, long live logging. You still need the logs. Right.
So I got to talk to you about that one, though.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that.
There was a webinar scheduled. Unfortunately, it had to be postponed. I think there wound up being a speaker conflict.
Oh,
but it's going to be a webinar coming up. I don't know if you were on the call when we were going over that with the team earlier.
I did hear about it on the call.
Yes. But it's an interesting concept, right, Mitch? Because when we first started doing security, you had logs. And logs we used for forensics. Mm-hmm. So you kept your logs in your log files. And then, 180 days after the attack, you found out there was an attack. And then you said, Mr. Chekhov, go back to the logs and tell me what you see there, right? And you go back to
only keep them 90 days.
Right. Well, very sorry, Captain. We only kept them 90 days. Damn it, Scotty. But, but that's what we use logs for. And then, then with the advent of SIM technology, reading log files, parsing logs files, and trying to get actionable intelligence in semi-real time from a log file became a thing. My 2 cents is it never really worked because it's just still not real time. But we've gotten better with AI and with things like that in doing that. So let's hope for the best and see where we go from there.
It's an interesting problem. One of the companies I'm doing some work with is Comcast Technologies, and they've spun out one of their, you could call it observability, but it's not. It's a product called DataBee. And it's really taking a data management approach, not a security approach, a data management approach to solving the myriad of information you want to aggregate all together, correlate, add context to, and then find out, are we compliant in this part of the organization? What happened with this attack here? And they do things like even include organizational information. So you can say, well, yes, this is the thing it happened on, and that's who it belongs to. In a big company, that's hard to track down. So people are taking some innovative approaches, like saying, well, data scientists have solved some interesting problem here with data lakes and some of the analytical tools. Let's see what we can do with that, with all the myriad of data we get from logs for security.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting. And it's funny, Mitch, as we store more, we pull our hair out and say, oh my God, how am I going to pay for storing all this data? And then we get the ability to parse that data and you make actionable intelligence of it more. And we say, okay, let's store more. And so we constantly store more and we constantly find more uses for it. But I always worry at some point, are we going to drown in our own data here? I mean, that's an arms race unto itself.
It is. Well, it's also why machine learning took off, because we had so much data. So maybe there's a machine learning opportunity here.
Well, you needed a certain critical mass of data to make the machine learning go.
Exactly.
And I think we passed that already, but we're on our way. Hey, Mitch, we're almost at the end of time here. I wanted to just take a little time, because we didn't get into it in the beginning, about what Security Boulevard Chats looks like going forward. Mm-hmm. We are the companion podcast to securityboulevard.com. So, of course, we're going to feature securityboulevard.com content, but we'll also feature TechStrong TV interviews, some of our Security Boulevard or TechStrong Learning webinars, TechStrong Research, of which you're the general manager and principal analyst. TechStrong Research on security, and everything else, within the TechStrong family. But we'll go outside the TechStrong,
of course,
sites as well, network as well. And we'll also be featuring guests. Right, it's important when we first kick these off that I think you and I sort of lay the foundation. But we'll bring people on. We should also mention that you, along with our friend Jennifer Manila, host the CISO Talk video series, which has its own podcast as well. That's once a month, where these will be more like every week. But people should tune into that. And then we're doing podcasts companions to each of the TechStrong sites. So there's DevOps Chat for DevOps.com, Security Boulevard here for Security Boulevard, TechStrong AI for our AI audience, Digital CXO for our executive digital transformation.
Cloud native now.
And for cloud native now, right? For cloud native. Thank God you and I aren't hosting all of those, Mitchell. We just do DevOps at Security Boulevard. But
just leave the mic on record.
We could just podcast. Jack us in, like what's his name?
Neo.
Red pill, blue pill, Neo, exactly. But Mike Vizard will be hosting some of those, and as well as Sharon Florentine, Amanda Rosani, Bonnie Schneider doing Echo Insights as well. Jody Ashley and Tracy Reagan doing TechStrong Women.
Yep.
And of course, we do DevOps Unbound as well. So there's a full lineup. As well as there's also one other one, TechStrong 55, which is really aimed at Gen Z folks. Natan Solomon will be hosting that. So we've got a lot of podcasts here on TechStrong, and they'll also be, they're all videos. You can listen audio or video. They're on TechStrong TV as well as your favorite podcast platform. So have at it. And Mitch, I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. And, we've kind of applied our learnings from podcasting before and recently and said, let's more narrow cast our topics around security for security folks, cloud native for software, cloud people, et cetera. And so that's why we've kind of rejiggered and started some new ones and worked with the existing ones we have to tune it a little bit better to what our audience is asking for. And I think this is a great format. So I'm looking forward to doing more of these with you, of course.
Absolutely. All right, Mitch, you want to take it home?
Yeah, well, you've listened to another episode of Security Boulevard's Chats, and we thank you for joining us today. I'm Mitch Ashley.
I'm Alan Schimmel.
And you've listened to Security Boulevard Chats. Join us again another time.